individual was identified as Claudio Neves Valente, date of birth, and he was a 48-year-old man. He was a Brown student. He was a Portuguese national, and his last known address was in Miami, Florida. And I will tell you that he took his own life tonight.
The breaking news out of Rhode Island. Overnight, the Brown University shooter is dead. We have the very latest this morning. And after 40 years, she thought this day would never come. A Florida mom arrested and in total shock. We will show you the video that has gone viral, plus the Reiner family murders, what really happened at that Christmas party. Also this hour, OnlyFans model Courtney Clenney will spend the holidays behind bars. One of her defense attorneys joins us live. It's all next right here on Opening Statements. Good Friday morning and welcome to Opening Statements. I'm Ted Rollins in for Julie Grant on what is turning out to be a very busy Friday as we bump up against the holidays. Boy, the overnight developments out of Brown University. The manhunt is over. The authorities, with the public's help, are able to track down the Brown University shooter, also connected to the MIT professor murder. We're going to get into that and give you all the latest information. But first, as we always do on this show, we start with the daily docket.
There's no evidence that Regina Hicks was driving that vehicle. There's no evidence that Regina Hicks floated from the passenger seat, from the driver's seat to the passenger seat, which is what would have had to happen if she was going to commit suicide. Her relatives will also tell you, when they saw her that day, she was not suicidal.
In Ohio, closing arguments expected in the drowned wife murder trial for Paul Hicks, nearly 25 years after his wife was dead. He's accused of killing his wife, Regina. Court gets underway 9 o'clock Eastern Time. In Wisconsin, sentencing expected for 16-year-old Paris Larry. We watched this trial, 10 a.m. Eastern. He faces up to life in prison after a jury convicted him of killing Tatiana Zek. In Utah, sentencing for Maya Bailey scheduled 11 o'clock. She pled guilty and mentally ill for the brutal murdering of her parents. But our top story this morning is that manhunt in the Brown University shooting suspect is now over.
The video of that subject matched the description of that person of interest that this police department was desperate to put handcuffs on. That individual was identified as Claudio Neves Valente.
As you heard there, the suspect, 48-year-old Claudio Valente. Law enforcement announced they found him dead in a storage unit in New Hampshire with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. He was a former Brown student, but 20 plus years ago, a Portuguese national who was granted permanent U.S. residency back in 2017, last address in Miami, Florida. In an affidavit, investigators said a campus custodian and a Reddit post helped narrow the search for the suspect. The gunman, of course, opened fire on Saturday, killing 2 students and wounding 9 others on the Ivy League campus. Valente is also suspected of killing the MIT professor in Brookline, Massachusetts, days later. Officials said it appeared the men attended the same university in Portugal. A sad ending to a horrible story. Let's talk about it. With us, criminal defense attorneys Joe Tamburino and David Bruno, and former FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffindeffer. Neves Valentino was also responsible, of course, for killing that professor. The facts are all coming in overnight. I want to go through quickly the timeline here and some of the facts that we know. He was born in Portugal, but a permanent resident. He arrived in the U.S. in 2000 as an F1 student at Brown. He attended school only from the fall of 2000 to the spring of 2001 in the PhD program for physics, went on a leave of absence after spring, and then he withdrew officially in 2003. He's got no criminal record. December 1st, he goes to Boston, rents a Nissan Sentra, drives to Brown, basically that vicinity. Then on the 13th, he opens fire in the physics building at Brown during a study session, killing those 2 students. December 15th is when he is accused of arriving at the MIT physics professor's house outside of Boston, shooting him in Brookline. Then he switches the license plate on that rental car, goes out to this storage facility they had rented in New Hampshire, and that's where his body is found yesterday, and bringing this manhunt to an end. Jennifer, wow, what a strange sort of trail this was for investigators. The FBI, they had that video, but it wasn't real clear. Little help from a custodian, a Reddit post, eyewitnesses. Your thoughts on how this investigation and manhunt unfolded?
Well, I will say, once they got video out, that was such a game changer. And when I say video, I mean of the individual who was the former Brown student who was said to be actually homeless in that area, that provided the key information about that car. And then that car, of course, led to the rental agreement and identifying the shooter. So this was great police work starting after they decided to release that video. Prior to that, there were a lot of hiccups, terrible messaging, but at the end of the day, they got him, unfortunately, not before the MIT professor was killed.
Yeah, and that connection, of course, those two knew each other back in Portugal. Joe Tamburino, overall thoughts on this? Obviously, this case is closed.
Good morning, Ted. Thanks for having me on. Yes, I think the one thing we should learn about this is let law enforcement do their jobs. I mean, you know, there were so many second guessings at the beginning of this case. Even the president was talking about it, how Brown messed up or FBI messed up, everything like that. You know, the public doesn't have a right to see everything in a criminal investigation. They don't have a right to really see anything in a criminal investigation except for certain facts that come out. But most of the time, that's part of the investigation. I think overall, the law enforcement officials did a good job with this. They worked with the FBI. But I think sometimes we just have to take a breath and let law enforcement officials do their jobs. And I think this was solved pretty quickly.
On the same token, David, the public was involved, and it was a member of the public, especially with that Reddit post, that helped identify this suspect.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, see something, say something. We're in 2025. I mean, it's so critical that, you know, we use our resources everywhere. I just have to, you know, on the Brown University piece, you know, when are we as an institution and as a society going to upgrade all of the surveillance videos? It's 2025. We saw in the Brown University investigation early on that institution really didn't have the tech, and they had some blurry video coming out. Now, the video helped, but with that being said, let's move with the times on universities and institutions and, you know, threat places, because this is a very real threat. This individual had no criminal history. I mean, 20 years earlier was at that university. There was no real signs that we know now, and I think that we all have to do better.
Jennifer, to that point, a couple of things. We should clarify this Reddit post. What it was an anonymous post. Someone who had seen the video and was familiar with the area said, you got to check out this vehicle. And described what turned out to be the rental car that the suspect used. That started it. Then a custodian said, oh yeah, I remember that video. I remember the dude with the gate. But as David just pointed out, this guy was there 20 years ago. I mean, talk about a simmering hatred from an FBI perspective, an investigator perspective. Usually it's who was upset last week or who just recently got fired? You know, 20 years, does that surprise you that that person was simmering with hate for that long?
Well, what I think the link we're missing here is some proximal event that took place recently that set him off, that made him start that venture. But to your point, he left Miami in about October to come to New England. He rented that facility in November. And so at that point, in that time frame, that appears when this planning first began. So what was the proximal event that happened that ignited him to come and shoot up Brown and take the life of this MIT professor? That's the link we're missing. I think we'll find it out.
And it could have been something from the MIT professor. Maybe he got an award. Maybe you never know, right? And how do you go back? And will there be an investigation, Jennifer? Is this something that, I mean, the guy's dead. Does the Bureau care about that?
Yes, there will be an investigation for multiple reasons. They're going to have to tighten up and make sure that nobody else was involved. There's no indication of that, but they need to tighten up that loose end. And secondarily, the behavioral analysis unit in the FBI, this is their bailiwick. They're going to want to get all the information they can regarding him to make a full profile that can be used in their patterning for other killings just like this.
And Joe, this was planned out, to Jennifer's point. He's in the area weeks before this shooting took place. He's already rented a storage shed to take his own life. Overall thoughts?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, we see this. I mean, you have very deranged people, not legally insane. I'm not saying that at all. It doesn't seem like this guy was. But, just common sense deranged who do these things where they have deep-seated hatred and are basically focused on one person and want to kill them. But I think I agree with Jennifer. They're going to do a full investigation on this. They're going to do profiling. And the other thing they're going to do is making sure that their video camera system at Brown works well, and the cameras are pointed in the right direction. I mean, from what I've read, that university has 1,200 cameras. That's a lot of cameras. I mean, and I think that's appropriate in today's world. But you got to make sure that they're working properly, they're in the right areas, they're pointing in directions that would be helpful, and they're all stored correctly and are able to be, given to law enforcement basically at the drop of a hat.
Yeah, but David, at some point, you can't protect against everything. If 1,200 cameras, this guy was there for 2 weeks. He obviously was looking, and there is some of that video where he's looking around. He's casing and figuring out his mode of what he's going to do, where and how. And if you've got someone who is not an obvious suspect, who is hell-bent on doing something like this, it's pretty difficult, is it not, to defend?
It is. It is. High population areas like this, foot traffic everywhere, especially the lack of criminal history. I mean, this individual had no contact with Brown University for 20 years. Final point from me, hearts go out to the victims and the families, Ted. I mean, we're in holiday season here. People are gathering and celebrating while this community is devastated by this. So heart goes out to everyone there.
Absolutely. 3 people will not be with their families this holiday season because of this deranged, as Joe pointed out, individual. We'll get a break. Coming up next on Opening Statements.
Uh-oh, they're coming for you, Sharon! They don't want me. They want Reggie. What's up?
Well, we're here for you, ma'am. Definitely here for you.
Why?
If you haven't seen this video, boy, oh boy, a mom, a secret, and an arrest that nobody saw coming. The video's gone viral. We'll talk about it this morning. And what led up to the Reiner family murders. We'll take a closer look at that Christmas party the family attended before the tragedy struck.
Think you deserve to die for murdering those innocent people?
You tell me.
Can you see how damning that evidence is? How do you explain that?
My goal is to make sure that you remember me for the rest of your life.
Oh my God. It looks more like fury than fear.
I feel guilty for that.
You felt guilty because, frankly, you were guilty.
Interview with a Killer. Marathon starting Christmas night, 8/7 Central. Only on Court TV.
Oh, a crazy story out of Florida that is trending in true crime. 4 decades later, a mom is arrested for allegedly stealing her own daughter in the middle of a custody case. All right, so she gets away with it for an extended period of time, has lived a whole new life, and then as she's standing outside with her neighbor, chuckling away and having a grand old time, the cops show up.
How you doing, Miss Sharon?
Good, how are you?
Pretty good.
Uh-oh, they're coming for you, Sharon! They don't want me. They want Reggie. What's up?
Well, we're here for you, ma'am. Definitely here for you.
Why?
We're waiting on the detective to get here, but we have With all the information that we do have, you have a warrant for your arrest.
They're cheesy. They have to be.
Ma'am, we're not.
I'm so sorry.
No, you're okay.
I'm so sorry.
Okay, go ahead and go home. Thank you.
I don't understand.
Yes, ma'am. So.
You're Sharon, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to put you in handcuffs, okay?
Can I take my dog in and get my husband?
We'll give the dog.
Go ahead and get your husband, and we'll get your dog taken care of. But,
You want me to hold the leash for now? I don't want to. She's I don't think she's gonna get away. Well, you don't have to do that. I'm not gonna.
I gotta still put you in handcuffs,
Here,
ma'am.
let me have this. I promise I will not hurt your dog under any circumstances.
We'll do it in the front, okay?
There it is, the shock you could see that. But on the other hand, at some point she's absolutely understanding of what's going on. That moment, Deborah Newton taken into custody for kidnapping her daughter 40 years earlier. Newton was living under the name of Sharon Neely. That's why I heard the neighbor saying, "They're coming for you, Sharon." Investigators located her in Central Florida, charged her with custodial interference, a felony offense in Kentucky. This is where the case originated. Newton reportedly told her then husband that she was moving to Georgia for a new job. But when he arrived, Deborah and their daughter, Michelle, were gone. Michelle, now 46 years old, was considered missing since she was 3. So first reaction to the gone mom, Deborah Newton, from our guest, Joe Tamburino, David Bruno, still with us. I mean, this woman and then the neighbors, classic. She had obviously rebuilt her life, and probably, you know, for the first 5 years, 10 years, Joe is maybe waking up every day and thinking of it. But 40 years later, I'm sure she's thinking, all right, I got away with it.
Absolutely. I mean, think about this case. This case is so fascinating because I think it was back in 2005, they completely dropped the case because they couldn't find the dad. They took Michelle off the missing children's list. I mean, this case was dead. And then all of a sudden, earlier this year, there were some tips or a tip from someone who said, gee, I think this might be the mom who back in the 80s supposedly took the kid and ran away, you know, a parental rights violation. And then they put some things together and voila, they have it. I mean, it's amazing, but it does go to show you the power of social media and media in general. I mean, when people see things on the internet, on their phone, on their computers, sometimes it sticks in their head and they think, yeah, I remember something about this. It just jogs their memory. So it's really fascinating.
Yeah, one person just said, you know, that lady kind of looked like, and boom, to your point, now this investigation is back on, and now it's been solved. David, long time has gone by. Prosecuting her, is that going to be a problem?
Well, when I first saw it, I said, what about the statute of limitations? You know, because this is so far away. And they also dismissed in the middle of that. But guess what? Kentucky does not have a statute of limitations on the child interference. So that's getting through that first technical hurdle. And it's also a range in a sentencing with 1 to 5 years. So it's so remote. I mean, it's gone by. The child is now 45 years old. So I wonder how prosecutors are going to prosecute this. What's going to be a reasonable disposition given the time that has gone by? And also, if the biological dad is not around or not available, it creates a number of other probative problems that prosecutors may have to actually go the distance on something like this.
I think he is around, and the 45-year-old now has figured out, oh, I have a dad who, and my name is actually, you know, for this individual who's an adult, she didn't know anything. Joe, what do you think in terms of the punishment here for the defendant? You know, is this something that you think pleads out and she does a little bit of time?
Yes, I think this will played out, and I would be surprised if she gets prison, and here's why. For all that we know, yes, she shouldn't have taken her child and avoided the father, but we don't know why she went. I mean, I would imagine in her defense, who knows, there's going to be something that she had to leave. Maybe it was an abusive situation. Who knows what the defense could be. But if what we find out through the litigation of this case is that her child lived a good life, that she provided for her, that she was a good mother other than doing this act, and everything was pretty normal for the past 40 years, I think it would be quite difficult for a judge to say, okay, I'm putting you in prison for 3, 4, or 5 years. So I think a case like this is ripe to be worked out, and I would be surprised if she got prison.
So, David, to that point, will the 45-year-old be interviewed to find out her life, what, in terms of how, to Joe's point, how she was treated, how, et cetera, et cetera?
Oh, absolutely, as to how she was treated, but she's not going to have much probative information with respect to what happened when she was 3, because this happened way back when this child was 3 years old. And Joe, this is a very real problem. So there is a level of deterrence that's necessary here to show that this is not how you handle your custody disputes. You go to court, you deal with it. If it's a divorce, you negotiate and resolve custody. This is not the way. And this is a very real problem, unfortunately, in some of these custody disputes.
Yeah, Joe, and that's right. You've got allegations of abuse that aren't there, and you've got a lot of things going on when you've got 2 adults that have a kid in the middle during a separation.
Oh, absolutely. But, on the other hand, I'm just going to be devil's advocate here. It will be relevant how Michelle was raised for what her life was for the last 40 years. There's just no doubt about that. I mean, if something is uncovered, that there was some type of emotional trauma, physical trauma, neglect, anything like that, of course it's going to have a bearing on the disposition in this case. But if everything is equal, if everything looks like it was quite normal, again, I just don't see a judge at this point in time saying, I'm putting you in prison for 5 years.
All right, we'll leave it there, see where this goes, but a fascinating case. And, boy, the video, the shock, especially from a neighbor, something else. You're never going to get away with anything. It's always out there, and this woman obviously experienced that. Let's get a break when we come back. Hollywood, still mourning Rob and Michelle Reiner's death. We're taking a closer look at what led up to the horrific homicides. Plus, OnlyFans model Courtney Clenney is going to be in jail for the holidays. Tried to get out on bail. Big hearing yesterday. Her scheduled trial now set for spring. We'll talk to one of her attorneys joining us live.
Actually, done. Okay, fine. Done. Because you're costing me money. I didn't do because I got to this house because of you. You let my mom say some line at no, because of you. Flirting with like 3 girls the whole time. 3 girls.
The difference.
The weekend before Hanukkah, Hollywood and movie fans everywhere could not believe the news. Famed actor, director Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle were found murdered in their home. It didn't take long for police to make an arrest. And that suspect, of course, was their son, Nick.
Rob Reiner was a brilliant actor and director. His wife, Michelle Singer Reiner, was an equally iconic photographer and producer. These charges carry a maximum sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole or the death penalty.
Good morning, Your Honor. Alan Jackson, along with Caleb Mason and Elizabeth Little, and Watchman Jackson went on behalf of Mr. Reiner, who's currently present in court in custody. We are set for January 7th for an arraignment. That's the next court date.
Since then, information about the night leading up to the murders has been trickling out. And the Reiners, we do know, attended Conan O'Brien's Christmas party with their son Nick Saturday, December 13th, bringing him along to, quote, keep an eye on him. And then there's Nick's alleged behavior at the party. Partygoers telling the Wall Street Journal that Nick was acting strangely, asking 3 questions over and over to guests. What's your first name, last name, and are you famous? Nick was reportedly asked to leave the party, and Rob and Michelle left as well, but reportedly they did not leave at the same time. Now, so how did things escalate to murder? Here to talk more about it, Joe Tamburino and writer and podcast host Zach Peter. Zach, start with you. Little bits of information coming out, but it's all heartbreaking. The Reiners wanted Nick there apparently to keep an eye on him because there must have been something going on. What can you tell us about what you've heard?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, we've had a number of different close family friends, relatives that have said that for the past couple of weeks, both Michelle and Rob have had concerns about Nick's behavior. He'd become a bit more erratic. The most we'd publicly heard about Nick's behavior was back in September when Rob did an interview and said that Nick was in a good place. So I think everybody publicly thought that he had overcome a lot of the demons that he was battling with addiction and mental illness. But it seems in the past couple of weeks, he became more erratic. His behavior became unpredictable. Even at the party, I believe one of the guests has now come out and said that they overheard Nick arguing, and even Rob was expressing concerns with his own safety when it comes to Nick.
Here's the timeline here. The party was Saturday, the 13th of December. Police arrived at the Reiner home on the 14th, 3:30 p.m. Nick Reiner checked into a hotel at 4:15 on the 15th, and then arrested at 9:15 and booked at 5 a.m. And according to those people that talked about the party at Conan O'Brien's house, specifically to TMZ, Nick Reiner got into this heated argument with his parents, and it was very loud, and they all left the party but left separately. So there was an incident at the party, and as we look at the criminal prosecution here, how does this all, Joe, lead into a potential not guilty by insanity, which Alan Jackson may be pursuing? You know, he had the arraignment pushed back a couple weeks so that he could evaluate, one would assume. Your thoughts on how important these days and maybe months, but specifically days and hours leading up to the stabbings will factor in?
Greatly, and so go even beyond that, years and years before this offense. I mean, the only defense is going to be an insanity defense. That's it. And there's really two issues right now that I would like to know. I mean, I think the public would too. Is number one, is the district attorney going to go for the death penalty? Because, I mean, let's face it, you kill your parents. I mean, if everything what they're charging him with is accurate, you kill your parents one after the other. You do it in a very horrible way with a knife. I mean, how is that not death penalty eligible? Number two is, of course, this is going to be some type of a mental illness defense. What other defense would there be? I doubt it's going to be self-defense or something like that. And as soon as you raise mental illness defense, your entire mental health history comes into play. So these not only weeks before, but years before this event is going to be relevant. And there's one last thing. I'd like to know who called Alan Jackson. How is Alan Jackson on the case? Who's paying for this? Because what we seem to know is that the defendant here, Nick Reiner, he didn't have his own means of support. We don't know if he had any type of jobs, especially to afford high-power legal defense. I'm just interested to knowing who called Alan Jackson and who's paying for him.
Yeah, it's a good point. People have talked about that. And, could Nick Reiner, does he have a phone call? Of course, after he's been arrested. But he didn't make that first day of his arraignment because of a medical issue. So one would have to connect the dots and say, all right, he was not in a position to be like, I want my call and I want to call Alan Jackson. It seems like a family member has called that, which means that they're backing him. Zach, the Reiner story, specifically Nick, it played out, to your point, 4 years. And everybody knew that he was struggling, the back and forths, being Charlie, the collaboration with his father, all of that. Was there in Hollywood, was it sort of a known thing that the Reiners are struggling with this young man? And was there a bit of a focus on that, or did people forget about it?
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, most notably, we had the film that Rob produced called Being Charlie, which was loosely based off of Nick's life and their relationship together, his addiction issues. So it was at least somewhat known that Nick was battling. Some of the other celebs that we know that he was close with, Billy Crystal, Larry David, we've heard stories that, they tried to be a really good support system. We're hearing that Billy Crystal was one of the first on the scene right after Romy, Rob's daughter, found him in bed. So they had known that there had been addiction issues and mental illness issues in the past, but it seemed like he had kind of calmed down. Something transpired over the past several weeks that really seemed to send him in this downward spiral to the point where even Rob was concerned for his own safety and his wife's safety with Nick living with them at home.
Let's listen to back when Being Charlie was being promoted from the Build series.
The fact that we were dealing with, things that Nick had gone through and how I had related to it and how his mother had related to it, it forced me to have to see more clearly and understand more deeply what Nick had gone through. And I think it forced him to see things that I had experienced during this process. And it definitely brought us closer together. I mean, it was like over a period of a year. It was intense. It was difficult at times, but it was also the most satisfying creative experience I've ever had.
Joe Tamarino, I want to go back to what you said earlier about the potential for the death penalty. We did see District Attorney Hochman in his press conference saying the death penalty is on the table. Decision hasn't been made yet. To what degree is this going to get political? Hochman really went after the Menendez brothers, was elected in part because of his stance. It was so different from the existing DA Gascon's. Because of the high-profile nature, could this get political?
It's already political. I mean, you can't escape it. This is a Hollywood case from a major, major Hollywood family. Rob Reiner, rest his soul, was obviously an excellent actor, writer, producer, director. Everybody knows his films, and they're quite enjoyable. I mean, there's no doubt about it. So it already is out there. But I think you raise a great point, which is with the new DA, what are you going to do? Because this is part of what's called prosecutorial discretion. And what the public always wants in prosecutorial discretion is consistency. We don't want a prosecutor treating Bill differently than Jane because they're wealthy or they're high profile or they're social celebrities or movie stars or anything like that. So you're quite right. You're going to have to look at how this prosecutor, and he's pretty new, obviously, is going to handle this. Because if you go for the death penalty on someone who robbed a liquor store and shot the clerk, then how could you not go for the death penalty on someone who killed both their parents, presumably, in a very horrific way? So I think that this is going to be quite the decision for the DA.
Zach, I would think pursuing the death penalty would go over like a lead balloon in this case for voters in California. I mean, this story is sad to the core. It isn't, some crime stories you get angry because you think about the defendant and what they did. This is different. This seems just sad, sad, sad. Your thoughts?
I mean, we also haven't had a major case like this. We saw the public get really invested in the Menendez brothers case as, we were looking to hear any potential new evidence or arguments that they were looking to bring to the table. And we know they've been sentenced to life without parole, and they were fighting that. And that was a big controversial case. So I imagine even here with Rob Reiner, his son, his wife, these are prominent people in Hollywood with plenty of connections. I imagine all of these stars, from Conan O'Brien, Billy Crystal, they're going to be pulled in as witnesses. They were there the night of. Some of them were there the next morning or the next day with Romy, the daughter. So it's going to be a very high profile case. I would imagine, this is going to be something that we talk about longer than Menendez brothers and OJ.
Yeah. All right, we'll see where it goes. Again, it's just a difficult story. It's still playing out. January 7th, Nick Reiner will be back in court for his arraignment, and we'll see if the defense does indeed plead not guilty by reason of insanity. Thank you, gentlemen. Coming up next.
I feel like I am. Right now, like, I have not always been the victim, but, like, right now, I'm the freaking victim in the situation. I was scared to go downstairs and walk my dogs. I just walked in and I told him, you don't have a chance, and now, all of a sudden, this is all happening.
What's his name?
Christian Tobetchik. I'm sorry.
Christian?
Please, just, like, don't get me kicked out of my own apartment.
You just want him getting...
Let's get him out.
I'm scared. I'm scared of him.
OnlyFans model Courtney Clenney denied bond. She'll be behind bars for the holidays. She has a trial date. We'll get the very latest from her defense attorney. Joins us live next. Stay with us.
A brutal killing sent shockwaves through Hollywood.
Rob Reiner and his wife murdered.
Court TV takes you inside the investigation.
Their own son charged with their murders.
As a community mourns, and a troubled son is now a defendant in a double murder.
We will commit ourselves to bringing their murderer to justice.
The Reiner Family Murders, a Court TV special tonight, 8/7 Central on Court TV.
So January 20th, I would like for us to reconvene for status. And then officially, it will be a 4/16, 4/27 sounding in trial. I think that's pretty much all we can accommodate at this point.
All right, 4/27, that is April 27th, obviously. The judge setting the court date, the trial date for Courtney Clenney. Key rulings on Thursday's hearing, though, could tip the scales for her defense. Clenney appeared in court for two pressing issues, basically. Her attorneys were hoping to dismiss some privileged material that they believed that was related to the investigation. They don't want it coming into the trial. And a request for bond. Both were addressed by the judge, Judge Wolfson, before setting that trial date. Take a listen.
First and foremost, as to the defendant's motion to dismiss information based on repeated government misconduct and obstruction of evidence pursuant to Brady and Youngblood, the court is respectfully denying that without an evidentiary hearing. But as far as the defendant's second amended motion for reconsideration of bond, the court does not believe there has been a subsequent event or new information that would materially alter the prior rulings of Judge Cruz pursuant to 907-0415K and for Rule Criminal Procedure 3.132M. And that motion is also respectfully denied.
All right, so Courtney Clenney lost to both of those motions, and she'll be in jail for the holidays, but her trial's coming up. So let's get down to business here. Frank Prieto is with us, Courtney Clenney's attorney. Your reaction to the judge's rulings yesterday, lost to both. Are you expecting that? What's your take?
Good morning, Ted. Yeah, like you said in the outset, the good news is we have a trial date certain. The bad news is we did not prevail on either of the motions. Look, it's expected. A lot of times defense lawyers need to file motions to preserve the record on appeal if the client were to be convicted. We don't believe that's going to happen. We believe we'll show that Courtney acted in self-defense to save her life. But we have to file motions on the defense side to preserve the record. But just to clarify, one of the motion to dismiss was not based on the privileged materials. The motion to dismiss was based on newly discovered evidence that a police officer told a building employee who was the first person to arrive before the police. That gentleman was taking videos and photos of the crime scene. And a police officer, according to this person's sworn testimony in the civil case, told him to delete everything. In fact, stood over him and made him delete all these photographs which would have shown the pristine crime scene. So that was the basis of the motion to dismiss, on top of obviously the prior misconduct of the government, reading our privileged emails and texts. So, but again, we did not expect to prevail on that. The motion was difficult. the motion for bond difficult to prevail on because the prior judge's ruling. So Judge Wolfson gave us a great hearing and was very thoughtful about taking the evidence, but we did not prevail. Very difficult situation to get a bond at this point.
Will you be able to present that at trial, the story of the police officer allegedly telling the employee to delete everything at the crime scene?
We should be. That may be a discretionary call on the part of Judge Wolfson. We will be asking the court to basically instruct the jury after we elicit that testimony. The judge in their jury instructions, we're going to ask for an instruction that says we're entitled to a negative inference from that, meaning that the evidence could have been potentially useful to us and instruct the jury as such that they can make a negative inference from the destruction of that evidence.
The videos that are out there that show your client and Mr. Obumseli quarreling, fighting, sometimes it's physical, sometimes it's just, yelling, all of that. Will the jury see all of that? Or are you trying to restrict some of it? What's the defense strategy in terms of what you want the jury to see and what you don't?
Right, well, the videos, the media and actually the state attorney's office at their initial press conference, right, the infamous elevator video, is actually helpful to us. What people don't see is, and I know you have the elevator video coming up.
Cue it up. Yeah.
Prior to this, when Miss Clenney gets on the elevator by herself and goes down to the lobby, because this is when she got back onto the elevator from the lobby to go upstairs, she's actually, when she moves out of the elevator, you see there's a puddle of blood. She was injured when she got onto that elevator, which is why she was so adamant to not have him go back up, because he had the only key fob. And with that key fob, he has direct access to his apartment, and she had actually gone down to call the police. So when we show the actual beginning of this video, not just the snippet when she gets back on in the lobby, the jury's going to understand she was injured, went downstairs to get help, and then decided not to call the police when he showed up in the lobby. So there's a lot of backstory that the jury's going to hear that is not out there. And those recordings that have been played as well, those are 100% inadmissible. And in fact, Judge Cruz should not have even listened to those. The surreptitious recordings, I think Julie Grant had also asked about this many moons ago. They're inadmissible. Florida's a two-party state. You cannot surreptitiously record anybody. It is per se not admissible evidence. So that will be thrown out.
Will Courtney have to take the stand? If this is a self-defense case, 9 times out of 10, your defendant is up there telling the jury their fear and their story. Is there any other way to get that across to the jury without her?
There is, if her statement to the police is deemed admissible, there's going to be argument about that. The state has taken the position that it's self-serving hearsay, which would not be admissible, versus a quote-unquote confession, which is admissible. So there's going to be litigation about that. But Ted, you're absolutely right. In a self-defense case, most lawyers will tell you there's no other, unless there's some type of third-party witness, independent witness, which we do not have here. There were 2 people in that apartment. But Ms. Clenney will take the stand, more likely than not, and explain, how she was battered mentally and physically, and that the actions she took that night were to save her life. And that, in combination with the world's most renowned battered spouse expert, Dr. Lenore Walker, who's going to testify that Courtney checks all the boxes.
Frank, we got to go.
Spouse.
Thank you, sir. April 27th, trial date. We're back after this.